Good morning. It's Kevin Petersen here on the Chronichope podcast, episode number 8. I am Kevin Petersen. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the author of Chronichope, Parenting the Addicted Child. I'm also a treatment consultant. I help families through family case management nationally, help them find the appropriate treatment center and work with them before, during, and after treatment. And I have also created a podcast called the Chronichope Podcast. And what I've done is interviewed my favorite people in the treatment business. And today we have one of the greatest treats ever. We have my good friend, Hollywilson in Denver, Colorado. Say hi, Holly.
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me, Kevin. I'm so excited to chop it up with you.
Oh my God.
That's me.
Me too. I am so excited to hear everything we're going to talk about and sort of where we're going to go with this. Holly, you're obviously known throughout the country for being the owner and the starter of the founder of Women's Recovery in Denver, Colorado, which I want you to tell me all about in a second. But my first question for you, and sort of where I wanted to sort of lead us down the path is, can you tell us a little bit about you, and then also tell us why you started Women's Recovery?
Yeah, thanks so much. I feel so blessed to be here and be able to even talk about all this stuff. So thanks for having me. And yeah, I, just another drunk like anybody else, went into treatment myself when I realized it was time for me to get help. I consider myself a high bottom drunk. I didn't, go to jail yet or, get a DUI or any of those, lose my job, although it was very close. But I think I personally reached a point in my life where I just kind of got sick of myself and sick of my behaviors and decided like it wasn't for me, and that alcohol was the primary thing that was in my way of achieving the goals that I had for myself. And I had kind of cast aside all of my dreams and aspirations and was so focused on drinking. So I had enough. And once I was ready to get sober, I was fortunate enough to have a friend who was in recovery, and she actually worked in treatment. And so she had given me the little nudge a few years prior to me quitting drinking and said, hey, if you ever want help with your drinking, like, I'm happy to help you. And at the time I was like, that was rude. I'm never talking to you again. But lo and behold, once I was ready to get the help, she was the first person I reached out to. And I went to treatment myself in Utah, and I had a phenomenal experience. I went to a fantastic program, which I'm so grateful I knew somebody who worked in the industry. That is, for families, something that I like to share is it's good to ask people who actually work in the industry instead of just finding whatever's the first thing on the internet, because all treatment is not created equally. So I had the fortune of knowing someone, and she got me into an amazing treatment program that did really incredibly deep clinical work, childhood work. And I got to focus on a lot of the trauma that I had experienced in my life that I hadn't even identified as trauma. I always kind of thought, oh, you had a pretty good upbringing, you had pretty good parents. And, I was able to see that there were a lot of things that I didn't address because I was like, you got it pretty good, girl. So I got to get to the root of it. And it was in a co-ed environment. And after treatment, they said, we really want you to keep going with this, do aftercare, do sober living. And I was like, well, I want to go back to Colorado. And they said, well, there's not really anything like that in Colorado. And by the way, this was, 9.5 years ago. But they were like, we want you to stay here and do sober living. And I was like, what's sober living? I have to do something else. I thought I was all done with this treatment stuff after 60 days. But things had gotten so good already that I was willing to take whatever the recommendations were. So I stayed there. I did their aftercare program, which was 1 weekly session of individual therapy a week in one group, and sober living. And the sober living was only for women that I went into first. Mm-hmm. And that was a very unique experience. It was much like an Oxford house, where it was self-governed, and I learned so much. And I think it was at that point where I started to have this idea of like, wow, this stuff with sticking with the women is great. And I wish I could do treatment like this, because the level that women were able to open up in this all women's facility, this women's sober living, was so much more profound and in depth than what I had experienced in a group setting that was co-ed. And a lot of that was because of the types of stuff we talked about as women that we don't want to talk about in front of some dudes. So, not to mention that we didn't have the guys there to just distract us while we had our treatment goggles on and looking for anything else to take the place of alcohol. So I think that's kind of where the idea was born. And I went into, I did sober living and aftercare for my first whole year of sobriety. And from that point on, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I started working in treatment in Utah as a psych tech. I drove the druggy buggy to meetings and stayed overnight at the facility. And then I worked my way up through that program and eventually became their program director of their 3 levels of care: residential, PHP, and IOP with sober living. And then, you know, I went to grad school and to be a counselor, a mental health counselor. And then, yeah. And then I was actually still in school when I decided to go ahead and open up the program here, because I kept going around. I was working, you know, that's how, well, actually, we didn't meet that way. We met first. But then I was working as a marketer for a psych hospital here. Yep. And met everybody. And I started telling everyone, one day I'm going to open this women's program, you know. And then finally I had somebody who was like, well, why don't you do it? And I was like, well, I'm in grad school. I'm a single mom, so I don't think it's the right time. Like maybe in 5 years. And they were like, just do it now. And I was like, okay. So maybe I was crazy, but I went ahead and did it. And, you know, decided that for me, I thought that women's specific treatment would be most helpful for women by women. And that's where we are today.
Wow. I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, and you know, I think there's so much there. I mean, I could spend all day just talking about what a testament to the concept of recovery that you are, you know, that you're a single mom and that, you know, you've risen up from having some intense struggles personally, you know, and individually, family structure, being, like I said, being a single mom of probably the single most cute kid I've ever seen in my entire life, you know, and I don't say that lightly. And then opening up the, you know, the premier women's program, you know, that I can think of in the country. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing. And you know, we'll talk about this more as we sort of go to the next question. But I mean, you've done a great job of staffing it as well, and put some just absolutely incredible clinical staff and programming staff. And I mean, you have really worked hard. Oh, and by the way, you lightly mentioned that whole, and I went to grad school and got a master's in counseling thing. You know, that was just an on the side kind of thing I was doing, you know. I was like, what are you doing, lady? That almost killed me, you know.
No, it's no fun. But to your point, it's, you know, I don't feel like I can take credit for anything. I feel like I'm grateful for, you know, recovery and bringing me to a point where I have a higher power today that I know can bring me through anything. You know, if my higher power brings me to it, I can be brought through it. And I just feel like getting sober was the greatest gift, because it helped me to realize like I really could do anything, and that you know, I have the, you know, a program to manage my life and to get through things. And so I it sounds crazy when I think back that I did it all, but again, it's because I have a program, you know, a design for living. So
yeah, you know, I was thinking when you said that, is an old friend of mine in Denver, my friend Joe Nickel, she always would say, you know, I know that, you know, God only gives me what he thinks I can handle. I just wish he didn't have such a high opinion of me. You know, because it's like, come on, when do I get a break? Yeah. We got a couple of comments from a couple of characters we both know. Seth Bourne says 2 of my favorites. Good morning. And then our buddy Joseph Patrick Harrison says DWR, 2 phenomenal leaders on the screen. So that's really sweet. I really appreciate it. Yeah, those guys are solid dudes. Hey, so let's go to question number 2. Challenges. What are the challenges for a woman entering treatment?
Oh, yeah. This is something that I'd always heard the conversation of. And actually, when I started women's recovery, one of the first most consistent things I heard from my colleagues in the field was, are you crazy? There are not enough women in treatment to have an all women's program. And people would say to me, they're like, there's a reason there aren't all women's programs. There aren't enough women. And when you look at the numbers in residential treatment, historically, that's true. And so when I started this program, even I still had this very much like aftercare concept of IOP and sober living, that you go to residential first, and then you go to IOP and sober living as a follow-up to continue your recovery, which is a very effective model. I mean, it's definitely, I think we know from research that it's the most effective. However, when we started to think about, well, what are the reasons why women aren't getting into treatment as much? Because we know that the incidence is equal. So it's not that they're not affected as much by addiction, it's just that they're not seeking treatment. And so, that's something that Bader and I love to geek out on. And I'm sure some of the people who know us have already seen us talk about that a lot. But we think about women, and we think about, traditionally we hear, being on the phones, because obviously I was doing the admissions for the first year and a half, 2 years. You talk to people and they're like, I can't leave my family. And Dr. Bader loves to talk about the 90-10 rule of 90% of the time when a male goes into inpatient treatment, the wife will stay with him. The family will stay intact. However, only 10% of the time that women go to treatment inpatient, the men will stay. So there's some kind of idea of like, I've got to stay here to keep my claim on my house and my children, and and not to be kicked out or have to do something else. So that's one big piece that we've heard consistently, and we know from the research is wanting to keep the family unit intact. Also, just like anybody else, what about leaving our job? If I have to pick up and leave my job for 30 days, I don't know if it'll be there when I get back. And then how will I provide? So there are very real barriers there. And that one, is for both genders. But we also know that as a society, it's more difficult. Women are usually paid less than men. They're valued less than men. They have less managerial roles. So there's more of these squatters' rights in kind of both of the situations. So that's part of where we started to think is, well, if we're looking at ASAM criteria for IOP level of care, SAMHSA and ASAM, they're not saying that you have to have IOP as an aftercare. So we started to think, what about IOP as an entry level of care, and allowing women to, start here and see how they can do. And for me, it started to resonate because I think that being one of those high bottom, like high functioning alcoholics, that may have been a good option for me if it was doing as thorough clinical work as what I had experienced in inpatient. So that was kind of where we started to shift our focus, and lo and behold, we just blew up. It was like, once we started talking to, different providers and saying, well, try us as an entry level of care, because the other benefit is that we actually end up getting more women into inpatient treatment as well, because they can trust us, they can stay at home, they build this relationship. And then if they have the evidence put back in front of them of like, this isn't enough support for you, your disease is too progressed for you to be able to be successful in this level of care. Now we've already done some really good, solid foundational work with them. We've built the rapport, they trust us, they've seen some of the positive benefits, and then they're willing to take our recommendation to go to a higher level of care. So that's really benefited us. And I mean, one of the things that we always talk about too is women have a tendency to have learned through society of how to like show up and look pretty, and we can cover ourselves up. We have a higher pain threshold. I mean, if you want to talk about a good example, I like to bring up the man flu of and think about that in the context of like withdrawal. Like I can put on a pretty face full of makeup and hide my hangover a little bit better. We can stave off the consequences. Women are also less likely to be put into homelessness for several reasons, but those are the primary barriers that we found. And so we thought what we've recognized is that IOP is really a great entry level of care for women.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And you know, I want to tell you that as well, someone who's in long-term recovery from alcohol, drugs, and codependency and family of origin issues, I'm going to 1000% agree with you that, you know, yeah, women definitely. Well, I think first of all, there's more pressure put upon them to, you know, sort of steal up and look good and handle things, and everything will be okay. And I also think that, no, you're absolutely right, because I know for myself that, you know, I'm a big baby, you know, and I'm fortunate to have an amazing and an incredible wife who, by the way, just put a comment on the screen saying, my wife, Amy St. Dennis, says, loves the success of what DWR, your old name, such amazing results from women of all backgrounds and stages of life. And
Hi.
yeah, we are, in our house, we are big fans of women's recovery, and we are big fans of Holly Wilson. You know, another thing I wanted to sort of ask you a little bit about, staying in that the challenges area. Oh, I also missed that Marlis, our pal Marlis Botus, says hello. Amazing work is done and lives are forever changed. The model is proven to have great outcomes, and that is the absolute truth. One of the things that happened to me, and what I was saying is that, you know, being a clinician in Colorado and in Florida and working nationally as a family case manager and having, you know, 29 years in recovery, I knew there was a difference, but I didn't really know a whole lot about it. And then I was very blessed and fortunate to sit in on a lecture from Dr. Bader and Dr. Lofton, who you mentioned earlier. I want you to tell us who they are, by the way. And I heard Dr. Bader lay it down. And it was really funny because initially when she started talking about what an amazing program was, I was like, man, I wish I was a woman. And then she started saying, well, here are the challenges that women face. And she looked at me and she's like, still want to be a woman? I'm like, nope, I'm good. You know? So can you talk a little bit about that? About, well, first of all, Dr. Bader and Dr. Lofton, and talk about what the unique challenges in recovery in the treatment process are. So once we've got them to treatment, what are those challenges?
Okay, well, Dr. Bader is our Chief Clinical Officer, Dr. Letitia Bader, and I wish she could be here today. She loves to go, oh, there's her beautiful.
There she is.
Such a boss, and she loves to talk about all this stuff as well. We literally could talk all day about it, as some of you already know.
Yes.
And then, of course, we have Dr. Sandra Lofton, who is our Chief Medical Officer. And I mean, just an incredible woman and a unicorn. And we're so grateful to have such amazing women. I do think Kevin said before, I say it all the time. I'm like, there's one thing that I know that I'm good at is I do hire the best people. And again, I think it's, I don't know if I can take credit for it. I think it's a higher power that wants us to be successful in the work that we're doing, and that they just believe in the mission. And we do things differently than some of the classic kind of recovery models and approaches. And it's all evidence-based. We are all nerds. So we all love to geek out and do our research on, you know, especially Bader, because I can say, you know, I've had my personal experience and I think that this approach works better. And she just pulls out a book and she's like, okay,
yeah.
exactly why that works. Let me talk about Bessel van der Kolk and exactly where he referenced that.
Yeah.
Of why exactly what you're saying is right. So she helps me look smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of combination of intuitive and experiential kind of driven models, as well as researching where that's going. And again, we're so new as an industry. I think people forget that too, is that really the treatment industry is very, very new. I mean, we're not even talking 100 years old, not even, we're like what, barely 50 years old. Recovery in general, like the 12-step models and stuff, I mean, like a little over 100 years old. Psychology in general, like all this stuff is very new if you compare to, like, you know, the field of medicine and things. So anyway, we are just trying to do the best with the research that's available to us and what we see when we're working with clients. And again, luckily for some of us, we've been the client, so that helps us have a unique perspective. But a lot of I think women face a lot of challenges in recovery. I mean, we're talking about child care is one of the main ones that we see a lot. And I thought it was really interesting. I was talking to a client once doing case management, and she was really struggling to make our sessions. And one of the things we ask for a commitment of usually like between 10 and 12 hours a week from our clients. And you think about that and you're like, well, compared to residential, where you're there full-time 24 hours a day for 30 days, sure, it's not a lot. But when you're talking about mothers who have children and full-time jobs, and we're asking them to, you know, go out and participate in meetings in the community, it's like, that is a lot. That's a lot that we're asking of them. And so I talked to this woman in case management one day, and she was like, you know, I'll see if my husband can babysit the kids. And I was like, oh, your husband's a babysitter. So when you're just responsible for them, and and he's not responsible unless he's put on duty. And that is one thing that I do see consistently. And again, it's not by any means, and I want to just have this disclaimer, I am not a crazy like man basher or anything. All of the things that I share are just based on our experience and what we know works for women. But that was one of the things that was very eye-opening to me, is that a lot of our women, it's just taken for granted that they care for the child and that they organize everything for their children. And so they need support around that. We're talking about, when we talk about women with trauma, men can be a real challenge. We've seen one of the biggest reasons consistently that we have women who are reluctant to participate in 12-step programming is because of trauma that they have had previously with male perpetrators, and feeling reluctant to go into a situation where they feel vulnerable in front of men, which is, again, a big reason why we feel like, you know, trauma treatment for women really is best done in a gender-specific environment. Because, you know, for a lot of women, I'll talk about my own experience again. I had trauma that I didn't even consciously know of until I was 9 months sober. And it had happened so early in childhood that it had been repressed. And it took me that long. And that, again, is one of my main motivators for having the treatment that we do in the level of care that we do it, is because I went into 60 days of inpatient treatment and I laid it all out there. Everything that I had, I put it out there. I dug deep because I was convinced, first of all, that none of this stuff was going to work. So I was like, I'm just going to do it all the way, because that's my personality. It's like all or nothing. So I was like, I'm going to do everything they suggest for 1 year. I'm going to know that I'm digging everything out that I possibly can. And then when it doesn't work in 1 year, I don't have to stay sober, and I don't ever have to try to get sober again. Yeah. No, it won't work. Yeah. On the flip side, I actually just got really well, and I didn't want to go back to drinking. So that worked out. But even being willing to do all that work, my most significant trauma didn't surface until I was 9 months sober. So I had to, first of all, like from a physiological perspective, clear up, right? And then trauma can sometimes work in like layers, right? And so it's like this, I was working on this, I was working on this, I was working on this. And then it kind of, this bigger trauma was uncovered at a time when my body finally was like, I think you're ready to deal with this. And that's a lot of times how it works, is your body like unlocks it. And so being in a setting where I was able to just have women, I'm not convinced personally that I would have been able to address it being in a co-ed environment. And so that's one of the things that we hear consistently, is that for women, which a majority of women that we see have had some type of trauma that was with a male perpetrator. So we want to be able to allow them that space and that grace to be able to move through that, which is another reason why we don't pressure the 12 steps. We just have a conversation and we address the barriers. I mean, women will also, there's the telescoping effect, which is something I know Bader really likes to talk about, is that the substances wreak havoc on women's bodies worse like exponentially worse than men. And the primary reason is because of the fat composition naturally for women. And fat tends to lock on to some of these things and kind of store, the substance away in our body. So we have health consequences usually faster. So we see a lot of that as well. I could go on and on. There's lots of, unless there's something specifically you want me to address.
No. You did a great job. And I think
poor women, right?
Yeah. No. And I would love to just listen all day, because I believe so deeply in everything you guys do and where you're at. And, you kind of hit the main points for me, which are, here's the story I was going to tell you, is that when I was like 2 years sober, my sponsor in AA, where in Los Angeles, I started dating a woman who was also in AA, and he was like, hey, he's like, I just want to let you know that, that's great, knock yourself out, but women tend to come to recovery with stuff that a lot of guys just don't understand and don't have, and he's like, you just need to realize, that, you're a big dude. And when you would pass out or get drunk or put yourself in dangerous situations, the odds of anything really, severe happening to you was pretty minimal, and a lot of these women come in with that. And so you just have to be, knowledgeable of that. And so obviously it makes sense to me that if a woman's going to get sober, and like you said, eventually her body unlocks the trauma, she's going to need the assistance of people that understand that. And she's going to have to be in a safe environment where it's a peer-driven and clinically driven safe environment. So 100% with you. And I'm just so grateful that you guys are there providing that for the women that you do. It's just, I just think that's incredible.
Thank you. And similarly, I do think it's an old AA adage, but it's, the men stick with the men, the women stick with the women. And I do think it kind of goes both ways. It's not that women are experiencing a lot of this stuff in a vacuum either.
No.
It's similar for men. And, that is part of what we have to recognize in a, male dominated society, is that there is a difference, and there is, a tendency for women to be socialized, to keep stuff together and appear meek and mild and nice and all these things, and they are more so inclined to do that in front of men. And what we really want to do is part of the reason why I don't even have a dress code for the staff, because I want everybody to wear leggings if they want to wear leggings. It's like, let's let it all out. We got nothing to impress here. I wear my workout clothes half the time with like sweat coming off me from the gym. It's like, hey, we got nothing. We don't have to look cute here. Okay.
Yeah.
We want to look ugly. We want to look like ugly, cry ugly. Like, that's all good. That's how we want.
and dispense with the whole concept of cute and ugly, right? And just be, It's Tuesday and this is what I got. Just deal with it.
That's all we care about.
That's what I'm talking about. We have a quote from you that you gave me a while back that I'm gonna. Well, actually, can you see it?
Yes, you would.
Would you be kind enough to read it?
Oh, absolutely. There can be so much chaos in a family system when it comes to getting a loved one help for the substance abuse problems. I think I was supposed to say there. Having a family case manager to guide the family during this crucial time can make all the difference. Kevin Petersen is one of the leading family case managers in the country. The clients who we've treated that have engaged Kevin as a case manager have come in more prepared and willing than most, with their family system lockstep behind them. I wish every family could experience this additional support.
No,
Wow.
That's making me emotional. I'm so grateful. Coming from you, that means so much. So how do you guys engage with the family in the recovery process? So you have a woman, let's say you have someone who's bought into the program, she's doing the IOP, and she's, so tell me, what do you guys do? How does that look?
Yeah. So, like I said in the quote, fortunately, sometimes our family members will come in who are already engaged with someone like you, especially you, is very helpful when it's you specifically. But they come in and, we can work with those families. And what we'll do is we have our primary therapist is doing work with the client and also working with the family together. And so we recognize that addiction is a family disease. And so in order for our women to have the best results, we want to make sure that we're engaging the family too, of course, where it's clinically appropriate. There are cases where it is not. But if there is a significant other or a parent, people who have been impacted by their loved one's disease, we want to make sure that we are helping them navigate as well. Because one of the things that I recognize early on is that if a family system doesn't get well and one person is extricated from it and that they start doing work on themselves, if they're plopped back into the exact same environment, they will not be able to stay sober because the dynamics haven't changed at all. And so the family members will still keep putting them back in the same role. And in early recovery, you're not quite ready to handle that on your own. So we think it's critical to do the work with the client as well as talking with the family. What are your expectations? What are you hoping to see change? How have you been impacted by this? And also helping the person who's getting help see that. And that we think that is an integral part of their process, is recognizing how their disease has impacted other people. And so we try to do that work, and we do it on a highly individualized level. So it goes case by case of, do we start right away with doing some sessions with the husband and wife, or are we going to work with them separately first? We're also starting a family program. Our wonderful therapist, Anna Smith, is starting up our family weekends, which we didn't do traditionally. And I think part of that was because we saw a lot of our families early on had already had that experience. But what we found is that, you can't ever hear this psychoed stuff too much, but also we wanted to take it a step further of really doing a lot of good clinical work and process and, experiential work with the families and the loved ones to help them navigate that. So that's how we mostly do it. We can do anything from just regular updates to the individual work and the family programs, and it is on a case-by-case basis. And whenever there is a family manager involved, a case manager like Kevin, that again helps light years, because we already have someone who is on our team. And the more people we can get on the same page surrounding the individual getting help, the quicker that they're going to recover. So I'm always so grateful when that person is involved. And so we'll always coordinate the care with that individual. So especially with Kevin being a licensed clinician, that makes our jobs a lot easier because he's already done so much legwork. So it's about integrating with what their plan is for the family as well.
Awesome. That I'm so happy to hear that you guys are going to do a family program, and that's just wonderful. And I agree with you. Obviously, I think, one of the great mistakes we do is get people sober and then plop them back into an unchanged environment and then wonder why they can't stay sober, and especially when we're taking a look at the male-female dynamics and gender-specific roles and, the current situation of our country and where we're at and what's going on and how and why, I think it even makes it more important for us to change the family system. Mm-hmm. So that the whole system needs to be engaged. And we got another comment from Polly Siegel, one of my absolute favorites, and I know you're a big fan too. And she says, "Love you both. Incredibly grateful for y'all as a resource." Yeah. What a sweet pea.
The best. Best friends.
Yeah, I know. She's adorable. She's an amazing therapist. Yeah. Just straight up. Honestly, don't know anyone better of millennials.
I'll just go ahead and say it. And I even am considered a millennial, and I don't get millennials half the time. So I'm like, thank you, Polly. Thanks for solving this mystery for us.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm like, I was born in 1964, which is technically the last year of the baby boom. But it's this weird, I'm in this weird combination where I'm not sure I fit in with those guys or anybody. Anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. So, hey, last thoughts. Where are you at in getting licensed as a clinician?
Oh, I mean, I don't think I'll probably get licensed, to be honest, just because I'm not doing that much direct client care these days. I mostly did it for the educational portion. I am an LPCC technically, so I passed all the tests and everything. But I think for me, I'm just trying to focus on the bigger picture. I think one of the things that I've been advocating for largely, that I have been seeing significant movement with us as an industry, is this kind of introductory IOP level of care, and in helping people to, my passion is really early intervention. And I don't know why I know why it started that way, of like having to hit rock bottom. But I just think with the movement that's been made with mental health and breaking the stigma around, therapy and things like that, I think we're ready to kind of move into that next phase of, why are we waiting to the last minute to help people get sober? It's like, we don't go into the doctor, and they say, hey, you've got stage 2 cancer. And we don't say, I think I'm going to wait till it's 4 before I do anything. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of the way that we think about drinking sometimes, because of our personal attachment to it. And I understand that, I'm sure as you do, when that's the only coping skill that it's really hard to imagine your life without it. But at the same time, I hope that we can see a continued momentum in identifying problems with substances earlier, before it's too late, before you've lost your family support, before you lose all your finances and resources and insurance and all that. So yeah, I don't even remember what you asked me, but that's.
Well, I asked you about license, if you're going to go for licensure, and it sounds to me like I see what you're explaining is that your mission is more advocacy and expanding the role of treatment in general, and for women in specific, which is freaking awesome. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible.
What you're doing is amazing. I'm like so excited to be part of the Chronichope Institute. Like this is what families need. And like I said in the very beginning, like I was so fortunate. Like I feel just lucky. Like I feel like one of the lucky ones that I already knew someone who was working in treatment, and I didn't even know to need that. I mean, a week before I was Googling on the internet, like, how do I cast alcohol demons out of my body? Like, I didn't know what I was doing.
That's awesome.
Who knows where I could have landed if I didn't have her guidance. And so it's like, it's so great that families have you as a resource. And I think that's one of the main things when we talk to people in admissions on the front end and they're comparing treatment centers. I mean, we're always the first ones to say all the people we know who are doing good work. And we also equip the people who call us with questions. We say, okay, well, make sure you ask them, how many licensed people that they're going to see weekly, how many hours of clinical work they're going to do, is the facility licensed by the state? All the questions that we try to equip people with, because I think that families are so desperate, and they oftentimes are in this place of rock bottom, and they just want to do something so quick, and they're usually in a moment where they have to intervene quickly, and they just go to the first thing that they can find. And so most families aren't aware that there are people like you who can help them navigate this, and it will make their lives easier, and that that you can guide them in a place that's going to help their loved one be set up for success. And it's not just about that one person. It's about this whole family system that has been, everybody's been suffering, not just the person who's addicted. So yeah, it's so cool to see how much, you've done, and your book is amazing. And so
thank you.
Mutual Admiration Society.
Okay, let's wrap up. Give me the elevator pitch. Where are you guys? Give me the data, the specifics of your program, and how somebody reaches you.
Okay, great. Women's Recovery, we have 2 locations, Denver, right around I-25 in Colorado, and then up in Summit County. We are IOP and OP levels of care. We do also have a beautiful sober living home. It's like a cribs house, so it's pretty cool. We do have all licensed clinicians on our staff. We provide individual therapy, group therapy, psychiatry with Dr. Sandra Lofton, as well as extensive case management. So we're really focused on empowering women to reclaim their lives and live the life that they want to live, not the one that we want to see imposed upon them. So we have highly individualized care. Our specialty is in trauma work. And so we recommend long-term care with us, minimum of 90 days in IOP. And if you would like to call us, our 800 number is 888-233-1553. Our website is womensrecovery.com.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's wonderful. And thanks for referencing my book, Chronichope, Parenting the Addicted Child, and the Chronichope Institute, which is sort of the new umbrella going on top of everything, which has a new YouTube channel, which this podcast will be on, and we'll be blowing it up on social media. And I'm actually in the midst of writing a second book. It's going to be more in depth on family case management and not so much specific on working with teenagers and adolescents, but anyone in the family. And trust me, I'll be asking you for some input on what it's like when it's, the female, the woman that needs the help, and because one thing I've learned is I'm going to defer to the experts, and not think that I'm capable of writing books and chapters about what it's like for a woman's recovery process. I
hear you. I'm the same. That's why I hire all these brilliant women behind me. I'm like, I'm just get the smartest people around me, but I'm obsessed. Your book is great. If anybody hasn't read it, you have to have it. It's a must-have for family members, and we have our book on hand at our site that we give to families as well. And it's amazing what you've done. It's so awesome.
Oh, Holly, you're so kind. Thank you so much. Bert wanted to say hi,
Hi, Bert.
And he loves you. He misses you. And I think Blanche is downstairs with Amy. And, but the only thing I would say is that you guys, you need a dog,
All right, I'll get right on that, Kevin. I'm just going to law school, but I'll just get a dog instead.
Yeah, no, I mean, the for work, not for home.
Oh yeah. Well, we have therapy dogs. We have 3 therapy dogs in the office. So.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's right. I forgot.
We have Minnie. Minnie.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They're framed up with the staff members on our wall, so they're official.
See, look, there I am. I was wrong. So.
Yeah. Did I forget to say we also have animal assisted therapy? So.
That's awesome. Fantastic. All right. So, Holly, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to see you.
Great to see you too. And I think the plan is that we'll be back in town sometime in September. So,
okay. I can't wait. We'll have to come in and talk to the women.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome. All right. Love you. Think you're awesome. Tell everybody I said hi.
Ready for watching too.
Okay. Yeah, you bet. Thanks everyone for the comments, and go to the Chronichope Institute and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And that's about it. Thanks.